What's up everyone, Lance Hedrick here. Today we're going to look at the Vario grinder. So, the first time I was exposed to Baratza was back when I started in coffee around 2014, 2015, and it was what everyone knows, the Baratza Encore. This was the first grinder I was introduced to as regards home grinding. The person who taught me how to make pour-overs had this, showed me how it worked, and I was really impressed. This was obviously way back in the day when I didn't have much coffee knowledge, was just beginning to drink specialty coffee, but I was really impressed with what he was telling me about their customer service and about their different lineups and the price ranges for home enthusiasts. Now, the Encore and the Virtuoso, they're both conical burr sets. And I had only been exposed to those because it's what I knew. And so my first grinder I purchased was actually the Virtuoso. And so I had the Virtuoso for a few years, but I'd been hearing a lot about the Forte and about the Vario and these flat burr grinders that they offered. I'd never experienced them. Keep going forward, and I won a Baratza Sette in some competitions, and I used that alongside my Virtuoso for a while. But this past year, while I've been more involved online, I've been seeing a lot of people talking about how incredible the 54mm ditting burrs are inside of the Forte and when they put inside the Vario. So I had to see what was up with that. I had people who were comparing it to grinders twice and thrice its price range. So this made me very curious. So I reached out to Baratza and I just asked them, I said, I want to do a video on this modification that I keep seeing people do. Is that cool with you all? Not only was it cool with them, but they actually sent me the grinder in order to do this. Now, even though they sent me this grinder, I was not paid to do anything. They did not ask me to say anything specific, and I will have things to say throughout this video. But I did want to just up front, I was sent this grinder, but what I'm going to show you has a lot of objectivity. There's obviously going to be a subjective component, and as you see this big boy here, I pitted it against the EK43, so there's going to be some good insight for you there. I get no monetization. I don't have any benefit for making this video except to kind of continue with my platform on this channel, which is accessibly priced coffee gear, making coffee accessible, making incredible coffee accessible. So I want to share with you all my findings on modding out this machine, on grinding with it, as well as some blind tasting that I've done. Anyway, we're set up, so let's go forward. All right, so let's go ahead and take a quick look at some of the mods that I have made on this machine. So the most obvious one, obviously, obvious, is this right here. And of course, I'm going to link everything in the caption below, so if you're curious what this is, you can see below. But this is acting as a bellows, which is just something that you can blow air through the machine to get the grounds out. So inside the Vario, you have horizontal burrs. So to kind of to show you what I mean, we have horizontal burrs in here, horizontally set burrs, which just means that when it goes in, the burrs are horizontal, as opposed to vertically set, which is like the EK43, the fellow Ode, and other grinders. So there is an issue here with some retention. So what this helps do is after you grind, you just put this on top, you give it a few whaps, and it pushes those grounds out into the basket below. Now, there has been speculation that this could be bad for the grinder, and the reason is because there's a little bit of gaps inside of here, and if you pump it a lot of fines can get through and maybe get in the electricals. I've not experienced that. There have been many people who've been doing this for a long time without that, but I did want to be upfront about the fact I saw that. But without this, there is going to be some retention. There's always going to be some retention to an extent. But when you add this, as well as something else I'm going to show you, you're going to be able to cut down on retention down to less than 1/10 of a gram every time. I'm essentially getting everything I put in, I'm getting out there, and then when I clean it, there's next to nothing in here. So that's the first one, is this little puffer, which I will link below. Next thing that you see is this. This is a 3D printed hopper, and this is actually from two different 3D printed hoppers, these two things right here, which will also be down below the Thingiverse files. But this one comes with a flat lid, which helps with single dosing. But it doesn't do a great job of helping stop the popcorning effect because the lid just sits on top like this. So it's really just a low profile single dosing hopper. The other one is a much taller hopper where this kind of fits all the way down. This comes down a bit lower, but there's still a gap between this and the burrs. So what I did is I kind of did a little combination. When I dump the beans in, I follow it with this, and this goes all the way down to right above the burrs, honestly. So it stops most popcorning, and it allows, a really nice grind. So I do that, follow it with that, and then once all the grounds are through, I replace, give it a couple of whaps, and I've got, whap, that was not a great choice of a word, was it? Not with a song. So that's the first bit I wanted to kind of talk about. The second bit delves inside, and so I'm going to grab pieces to show you. The Vario comes stock with these 54mm ceramic burrs, which I have swapped out with the 54mm steel burrs that come stock in the Forte. It's a $60 upgrade, so just heads up there. There are people out there who love the ceramic burrs, nothing against those people. I'm sure a lot of you watching love your ceramic burr profiles. I have found that I prefer the profiles from the steel burrs. The steel burrs are made by Ditting. Once they're well seasoned and well aligned, it makes incredible cups, but we'll get to that later. So one of the other mods I did is I switched out the burrs, which you can just add to your cart when you're checking out getting the Vario. Or if you get the Forte, it comes with the steel burrs. Another modification that I did is I took the burr carriers, right? So this holds one burr, this holds another burr. It's plastic, obviously. I swapped that out with the burr carrier from the Forte, which is much heftier, going to be able to hold its alignment better, but I swapped that out as well, which I can't recall the cost on this, but this is another frequent modification that people make so that you can replicate essentially the Forte with your Vario. So some of you are likely asking, well, why don't you just get the Forte? Well, the reason that a lot of people are opting for this is price. This comes in around $450, $500 US. Once you do all the modifications, it's just shy of about $600, whereas the Forte starts at, I don't know, $800 or $900. So you're saving a lot of money on doing this. The motor is the same. Everything about it's very similar. We're just switching out some of the components. So you can do this all with the Forte as well. The Forte just comes stock with those parts. So I swapped all of those out, and then the last thing I did that I thought was, well, actually there's two more things, which I'll show you here in a bit, but I did what's called the flapper mod. So there's a flapper that covers the chute where the grounds exit those horizontally set burrs, and what you do is you take that flapper, you turn it upside down, and that actually helps a lot with negating retention. That flapper can hold back a lot of coffee, so you just take it and you flip it up, and it stops. So I'll show you that in just a second. And then finally, the last modification that I've done is what's called the alicorn alignment modification. Okay? So the alicorn alignment is something that a home barista forum user named Jake G came up with some years ago, where you essentially take out the grinding mechanism and you do some fancy bouncing and screwing and unscrewing and a lot of other things that takes quite a bit of time and some techie know-how, I guess, in order to align those burrs. But essentially what you're doing is you're playing with the give and you're vibrating the burrs kind of into place to where they are set and aligned perfectly. And once you have these aligned and you tighten everything really nicely in place, the alignment will hold for a long time. There are people who report their alignment has held through multiple burr changes over the years, etc. So and I'm planning on making a video about this in the future, but right now I'm just going to go ahead and show you what that looks like. So the next scene is the guts of the grinder. So here we have it. Now, one of the first things I was going to show you is the flapper mod. I know this looks intimidating, but really all you need to do is take pictures of where the wires are when you're disassembling. Make sure to be gentle with it. It takes about, once you know what you're doing, it takes about 6-7 minutes to disassemble, about 10-12 minutes to reassemble. But it's definitely worth it when you learn this alicorn mod. But one of the mods I was going to show you is the flapper mod. So when you take off the chute, right, that comes on here, The mod comes stock, or the machine comes stock with the flapper. I feel you. I feel you. That's how I feel today. So if you just flip it upside down, this is just a super simple mod, like very simple. You just flip it upside down, you put it facing up. Bada bing, bada boom. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it actually is just like this. So what it does is it pushes that flat back to allow coffee going through, but that does end up holding coffee. And so you just flip that upside down and slide this back on. So now we've got the flapper mod down pat. Now I'm going to set this to the side because I'm going to show you just briefly kind of a teaser for the alicorn modification. What you're doing with this alicorn mod, and remember to not cross thread these, you're not tightening it righty tighty, lefty loosey. It's opposite of that. It's righty loosey, lefty tighty. So I've got that on, and then what you're doing essentially, the idea is you're playing with the tolerances that are given here. You're going to loosen the belt here, and then you're going to essentially what's called bounce the arms. And now there's videos, and again, I'm putting all the resources in the caption below if you want to go ahead and jump the gun and do this without my video, which is going to be fine. But essentially what you're doing is you're kind of playing with the macro and micro adjustments to vibrate and snug those burrs together. And that's going to help with the alignment. You're playing with the tension of that belt and the tolerance of these of the piece of equipment in general. So keep that in mind. Of course, you want to hold that motor in place, and then when you're screwing, you're going to screw in a crisscross pattern to ensure that it is tight in place and you're not misaligning it by screwing 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are some things that we'll go over in that video, but I wanted to take this apart and kind of show you kind of the, I guess, intensity of the modification so that you are aware of what you're getting yourself into. It will take you a little while, especially if it's your first time taking it apart, but just know that the Baratza grinders are super, they're super mod friendly. They're really easy to take apart and to mess with stuff, and if you do mess something up, again, Baratza's customer support is really helpful. I want to reiterate, even though I'm shining light on that, I have zero, I'm getting nothing from this video. I did receive the grinder for free, but it was a generous gift from them because they wanted this video out there because so many people do these modifications, and so I hope this is a helpful demonstration of that. And again, look forward to that video on me actually doing this whole process from start to finish, which hopefully I'll get done in the next few weeks. Anyway, I'm going to clap my hands, and this is going to be fully assembled because I have that magic power. The 10-minute rule doesn't apply to me. And all right, so we've now put that back together, and now we're going to move on to the next section. So what I decided to do for this video is I wanted to, for fun, pair it up against an EK43, just a stock EK43, nothing fancy has been done to it. And what I did is I did about 3 hours or so of blind tasting where I pulled espressos that were dialed in the same way, and I did some pour overs. And I did this on a Zoom call to myself, and I recorded it, and I will be posting that right here. And it's going to be posted on my Patreon, but I've made it public for everyone so that you can watch it. And so it's just 3 hours of me grinding coffee and tasting, and I do it all blind. Okay, so the purpose of that is to ensure that I'm actually telling a difference. And just to give you the results really quickly, resoundingly, the Vario beat the EK43 on espresso. It had more clear shots. It was higher acidity that was more clear and perceptible. There was more vibrancy to it. It was just a more enjoyable shot to me. Of course, that doesn't mean to everyone. People have different palate preferences. But out of the 5, I did a trial of 5 each, pulling espresso and doing pour overs that were dialed in together. And I did 20 grams in, 50 grams out in 30 seconds. And I did this on a San Remo racer, okay? And I used a force tamper. You'll see this all in the video if you go and watch it or scroll through so that you can ensure that what I'm saying is truth. But yeah, I did 20 in, 50 out in 30 seconds because I feel like that's a pretty typical type of shot. And this isn't taking into account all the strengths of these different grinders. That they could be better at different profiles, and I recognize that. This is not an end-all be-all type of situation. In fact, I don't have enough information for it to be statistically relevant, but I think it's good enough to present to you now. So out of the 5 shots I did head-to-head on the live, 4 out of 5 blind, Vario won. And honestly, the one where the EK won was the first shot, and it was something funky that happened in the extraction of the Vario, and you'll see that in the video if you go watch. But it was the hardest decision was the first one. I went back and forth, and finally opted for the EK's shot. The other 4, if you watch it, it was pretty immediate. I sipped it, and I said, first impression is this one, but I'm going to keep sipping. Kept sipping, and stuck with that first impression. Each time was a Vario. Now switch over to pour-overs, and it was 4-1, the EK43. And and I did it on different grind settings each time, both of them where I had the grinds set up pretty evenly. The one where the Vario ended up winning was kind of an anomalous one. You know how coffees sometimes do that. It was one that drained a little faster. Anyway, so from the testing, blindly, the Vario did win on espresso, whereas the EK43 won on filter, which actually aligns with the findings of God's Honest Truth in Australia. I'll link their article below where they talk about how every burst set has a specific range where it excels at. And so they argue that the EK43, based off of their puck density measurements, which we won't get into here again, I'll have the article linked below, they say that on an EK43, the ideal with stock burrs for grind size is from 4 to 14. All right, so on here, that would be, since y'all can't really see, it would be like 12:30 and about 6. So about 12:30 to 6 o'clock is kind of where, and going counterclockwise, 12:30 to 6 o'clock is where they postulate the ideal range for grinding on EK43 is, whereas what I have found with the Vario is the ideal range is more of the espresso side, at least for what I'm doing in this pitted, head-to-head competition. It still makes incredible filter coffee. It is, I use it very frequently at home for my filter coffee. But just know that in this setup, it won espresso. It got demolished in pour-overs side to side. Well, again, which crazily, lines up with that postulation by God's Honest Truth. I guess I shouldn't say crazily because it does make sense. Anyway. Okay, so while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and pull a shot on both. And again, this is not, I'm not doing this blind live. I'm just going to be talking about the differences. So there's going to be bias because I've already tasted these, but I've pulled numerous shots. What I filmed myself doing, which was linked above, was just kind of a snippet of multiple tests that I had already done. But it was the first that I really did blind and live, which, puts on the pressure. Okay, so we're going to pull some shots and... All right, so I have pulled a shot with both of them with same parameters. I did 12-second pre-infusion. I ended the shot at around 30 seconds, 18 in, 48 out. So we're going to go ahead and stir this up using my ume shiso spoon. So this one's the Vario. Just make sure it's nice and stirred. Really nice and really floral and intense on the nose. Highly aromatic. Lots and lots of orange blossom. Really sweet, really, like the acidity's punchy and it's really vibrant. It's really tasty. Let me rinse this off real quick. All right, so here's the one from the EK43. So the aroma's just a little dulled, but still really nice. This is just a good coffee in general. But it's accentuating kind of baking spices and like Teddy Grahams, things like that. There's some citric oils that you're smelling, but it's not as intensely pungent as this one was. The taste is nice. It's a much more subtle acidity. It's still really there because this is a very acidic coffee, but in comparison, it's just not as in your face. It's much more tame. The sweetness is arguably a little bigger, but overall, I mean, I prefer the Vario's shot. That being said, if this was not seasoned with the 20 or so pounds, like 12 or so kilograms, 20 or 25 pounds of coffee that I used to season it, I don't think it would be this good. Before I hit that kind of mile marker with seasoning, the shots were a lot less spectacular. It took quite a while, a lot of coffee to really season it, so keep that in mind if this is something you're wanting to do. You're going to have to invest in some cheaper coffees to kind of season your burrs. But yes, so again, this is not indicative. This is not my testing. This is not what I'm relying upon. I have linked there that Patreon video that I did, which was 2-3 hours long of me doing blind shots, and also just multiple weeks. I've been planning this video now for about 2 months or so. I've had this aligned for quite a while. I've been playing with different profiles of doing filter and espresso, and that that blind testing is actually extraordinarily reflective of my experience with both of these grinders. And so is this actually. This is, I mean, very good. This one just has more of it for me. I'm like salivating. I feel kind of weird with saliva coming out of my mouth while I'm on camera, but it's absolutely delicious. They both do an incredible job. I'm not going to sit here and make a pour over with both because, like I said, you can go check that Patreon. But I do want to just reiterate the fact that I understand that pulling those profiles is not necessarily the strength of either one. But in my mind, when you have a $3,000 grinder going up against a $500 grinder, out of 1,000 shots, 920 or so should be better on the EK43. And I chose a random ratio that I really like, that a lot of home baristas and home users do, which is a 1 to 2.5 ratio in around 30 seconds. So the fact that this is kind of geared towards home enthusiasts who don't have a massive budget, I wanted to do something that would probably be similar to what you're pulling in your kitchen, not some crazy flow profile, which is happening, don't get me wrong. People are modding out their Brevils, they're getting machines where they're able to flow profile, but the majority user, I would imagine, are people who are pulling more standard shots. So I wanted to do a standard shot for that test, and like I said, the Vario was just head over heels better, and you can see my reactions in that video. Now I want to discuss briefly kind of ergonomics of this machine. So as you see, there are two levers here where you have macro and micro adjustments. Now, the stock calibration of this is 2, which is the macro, and then Q, which is the micro. So micro goes from A to W, macro from 1 to 10. So you can adjust big steps with the macro and then minor steps with the micro. So it's typically at 2Q. So the best way I've found to discuss grind settings when referring to espresso on a Vario is to talk in terms of touch point. So it's very easy to change your touch point. All you do is you take this tool, pull out your bin. First I'm gonna get it in the slot. There's a slot right underneath, a little tiny hole, just perfect for this tool. And we're there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click start. And I am currently at 2, let's see. I'm touching at 2L, so what I'm going to do is this has a finer and coarser. So I'm gonna go coarser, and if you can hear that chirping, I'm gonna put my mic really close to it. You hear it touching? I made a minor turn, and now we're touching at, wait, I went coarser, I meant to go finer. I'm a dummy. So I'm gonna put this actually down to Q to get this back at stock calibration. I'm gonna go finer until we hear chirping. There, you hear that chirp? Chirping. So, when you hear that chirping, that's when you're at the touch point for the burrs. And so the best way to discuss your grind size if you're sharing recipes is talking in terms of plus or minus micro steps from touch point. So whenever you release a recipe or you share a recipe with a friend, instead of saying I'm on 3N with a calibration of 2Q, whatever it might be, you can say my calibration is +3. Right? And that would be +3 micro steps from touch point. So that's kind of an easier way to do it because I've noticed that very few people have it aligned exactly perfectly. Even at touch, it's not getting nearly as fine as some people might want. That being said, with most roast profiles and most coffees, you will be able to do shots like the blooming shot. But with those Nordic style roasts, those really, really light roasts that you really have to push extraction, those tend to run a little faster. So there are limits to this grinder to keep in mind. So while I do think this can compete with grinders that are double its price, you have to keep in mind that if you're using strictly Nordic style roasts, you might be limited in certain shot styles like the blooming espresso or something like, I don't know, something that's a slow fill type thing like a Slayer style shot. Now if you're someone who enjoys Allonges and turbos and sprovers, there is no limit with this. You're going to be able to do that as long as you're aligned and good to go. You're going to be able to do that with most any coffee regardless of roast profile. But keep that in mind that there is a limit with fineness if you're into those slower style shots as far as super, super lightly roasted coffees go, or really, really dense coffees, like a really lightly roasted Ethiopia coffee, for instance. That being said, I've been using this with all of the coffees for the company I work for, Onyx Coffee Lab, and there hasn't been anything yet that I haven't been able to do some sort of blooming style shot on my Breville dual boiler or my decent espresso machine. So keep that in mind. Granted, we're not Nordic roasters, but just keep that in mind with this. So something interesting to point out is this grinder actually has the same exact burrs as that new Mahlkönig X54. They're 54 millimeter Ditting burrs, the only 54 millimeter burrs that Ditting makes. So what you have here are two very different grinders at different price points with the same burr sets. So personally, with the price point of the Vario and with the beastly motor that it has and the longevity, and on top of all that, the customer support that Baratza offers. I said Breville because I've been saying Breville this whole time, and Breville owns Baratza now. But Baratza has incredible customer support, especially if you're stateside. I'll have a link below of someone that sells parts out in Europe below, but I'm not as familiar with their global connections. But at least stateside, their customer customer service is incredible. So much so that when I was talking to them on the phone, I asked them if they dissuade people modding their equipment. And even though it might say, you know, don't do this, that, or the other in the manuals, they will absolutely take your grinder in. If you've tried the mod and somehow you've messed it up, they will take it in and they will reset it back to that stock level. No questions asked. They are very excited, I guess is the right word, when people want to modify their machines to make them better. They like that type of ingenuity in that process. Okay, so ooh, what's happening here? It's like finger guns came out of nowhere. I haven't done that in a while. So they enjoy that type of playing around, that experimentation. They encourage it. They want you to do it. Just keep that in mind that they are very open to you experimenting. Just don't go crazy. Now that leads me to my next thing, which is really exciting for me to announce, and why I waited so long and teased this video out for so long, and that is Baratza today is announcing a new line of grinders. Well, not really a new line, but an updated line of grinders, and that is the Vario. So many of you have done this modification, have requested the metal parts. Woo! Did you see me jump? That shocked me a little bit. I was like, ooh. Onyx over there, the dog's name is Onyx. There's a new updated line of Varios that are coming out. The old is going away and the new is coming in. This is both exciting and maybe not exciting for some. This old, they've stopped producing a few months ago and they are going to be releasing these probably in November, their new Vario Plus line. And so there's going to be two different grinders. One of them will have the metal insides, which is what I showed you earlier. So one of them is going to come like this, but it will come with ceramic burrs, okay? So that's obviously not ideal unless you're a fan of the ceramic profile, but one of them is going to come like that, and then there's going to be a more expensive one, and I can't remember what all sets it apart. There's going to be some videos, I'm sure, that'll come out on these grinders soon, but the more expensive one will come with the steel burrs as well. Now, you can still buy the cheaper one and add the upgrades to it, the steel burrs to it, or you can go and find a used Vario and add the upgrades to it, which you can do in perpetuity because those Forte parts aren't going anywhere. And that's actually what I would maybe recommend doing. So keep that in mind, that is coming now. It's kind of exciting, kind of cool that they're going to be placing that in for you. The price is going to go up, obviously, but you would be buying the separate pieces anyway. I'm not sure the price difference there. I couldn't care less which way that you go. What I do want to say is, with the constant evolution of grinders right now, we're in a very specific place where we have like Mahlkönig doing a home grinder. We have that DF64, which is a super affordable 64 millimeter burr grinder, flat burr grinder. We have all these, and then the Kopi Diva that's about to be released. We have all these grinders coming in at cheaper and cheaper prices. And you may be asking, well, Lance, are you saying this is better than all those grinders? It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you have a Vario, 100% stick with it and do these modifications. I promise you, you'll have a game-changing situation. In a similar way with my Gaggia Classic Pro video, I don't necessarily think it's the best idea to buy a Gaggia Classic Pro and then put all those modifications on it. I would just recommend you buy a machine that has those already in place. It's just a lot of work to do, and you have to consider the diminishing returns, what's your time worth, all that stuff. But I do think this is arguably the best, as of now, as of this video, without the new releases available, I think this probably is the best grinder that sits around $500, at least in my own experience. I prefer flat burrs to conicals. I prefer the flavor profile that comes within the clarity, but I know a lot of you obviously don't. You like the conicals, you like the chocolatey, you like the body, etc. But I really enjoy these type of flat burr profiles. So I would highly recommend, if you already have a Vario, to go ahead and invest in the upgrades, which is not a ton of money. I think it'll be around $80, $90, $100. Make the commitment to do the modification, to do the hyper alignment, the alicorn alignment, which, a real quick aside by that, when you're doing the alicorn alignment, you're going to be doing a marker test, okay? And the marker test may show that it's perfectly clean. And I'll go over this when I actually do a video for the alignment. But do not rely solely on that marker test. That's just one, it's not truly representative of the alignment of the burrs. I will argue till I'm blue in the face that a clean wipe, if done properly with burrs barely touching, does show it's more aligned than a half wipe, which is where the burrs are rotating, but one burr is slightly askew, and so it's wiping only half of the burr. I will argue that a full wipe is better than that, but that doesn't mean they're perfectly aligned even if you get a full wipe. But that's not representative of what the burrs are doing under load, okay? So keep that in mind. Okay, I'll stop ranting now. Just know that I really do like this grinder. I actually have some more of the shot left. Okay. I really do like this grinder. I do recommend it if you have that budget. And I would actually probably recommend it. I haven't really tried the DF64, full transparency, but from people who have reviewed it, it does do an incredible job, don't get me wrong. But what I'm going to go ahead and say is, in my mind, with that whole idea of diminishing returns, if you're not savvy with parts and changing things out, it may be better to go with the Vario for you, only because the customer support side. Right? So you can send things in. If there's an issue, if something goes out, Baratza typically will replace that wholeheartedly. But if you have any know-how, it would probably be better to spend $100 extra or whatever it might be to get that and to throw in those other burrs and to do some modifications to make it an even better grinder. But for the price, for the customer service, for the convenience, depending on where you're at in the world, this is a fantastic grinder, and there's a lot of good reason why it has been exploding on home barista forums. If you just Google Variorte, which is kind of putting together Forte and Vario, or if you type in, I think they say Fortario, whatever, or just put in the alicorn Vario on Google, type in home barista, you can find articles and articles, and in the caption below, I'm going to put a lot of these articles that will help you navigate this world if you have a Vario at home and you're wanting to get into this. Even with ceramic burrs, you can do the hyper alignment. It's not very difficult, and I hope that you experience a better situation with your Vario. I'm sure it's already delicious, but the Vario's Fortes, they can experience a much better grind consistency when you throw on that hyper aligned, when you throw on that alicorn alignment. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'm again just so thankful for all of you who have been watching my channel. Please, 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 if you haven't, please hit that subscribe button. I know that's pandering, but it really does help. Also, selfishly, I just really want to get that 100,000 subscriber YouTube plaque. That'd be incredible. Please like, share with your friends, whatever. If you have someone who has a Vario, share this with them. I have timestamps below, which I probably should have said at the beginning of the video, but hopefully you saw those so that you can skip through and use what you need. Anyway, I've got my Patreon below, and it's through this that I'm able to produce these nice videos, and consider joining that for as little as $1 a month. Really appreciate that. We do some giveaways there with things that I buy with the Patreon funds, and I just have a lot of coffee stuff that I like to share with other people that I don't need anymore. Anyway, thanks so much. Hope this was enjoyable. Keep an eye out for that video that I'll be doing on the actual alignment process, and cheers.